Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Wrestling with Tomorrow, the podcast. I'm your host, Mike Kinney. It's a pleasure to be here. Episode 4, ladies and gentlemen. They're flying by pretty quick, as fast as the summer goes. And here we are. Speaking of as fast as the summer goes, it's back to school season. And I realize that a lot of schools often start maybe even at the beginning of August. We're right here at the end of August. Here in Minnesota, we are in full swing back to school, starting here this week and last week. So it's nice to see the seasons changing a little bit. And to be honest with you, I'm a fall guy. I love the fall. We've talked about this before in depth, but football season, Halloween, the cool, crisp air, give it all to me. Give me all. I'm going to make my Rotel dip. And if you're interested in the recipe on that, too bad, so sad. My cheese and meat dip for the football games coming up. Go Hawkeyes! And that's really one of the main things I look forward to in the fall. And Halloween, I've often talked about this. Halloween is not a holiday in my house; it is a season, and we start in August. We start hunting for all the pumpkin spiced everything, along with all the decorations. We've already hit a Spirit Halloween store. We hit a Spirit Halloween store right when it opened. Within the first couple of days, we had to go see what all the new costumes were and got all that rolling. So yeah, back to school season in full swing. My wife and I just got back from Maine a little over a week and a half ago. Maine, yes, the state of Maine. Many people have said, Mike, what's in Maine? I'm going to tell you this right now. It's a place that she and I have always wanted to go because we'd never been there. And big seafood fans. And as you know, Maine, lobster, all the above. I had some people reach out because they know my connection with horror movies. And they asked if I went to see Stephen King's house. And I wish I did, but he lives in Bangor. And we were in Portland for the long weekend. It was like a Thursday through Sunday. But we went to celebrate our anniversary, and I'm going to tell you the truth about this. First of all, I love Portland. It was an awesome city. I would go back in a heartbeat. It's just it's got so many restaurants and just sightseeing things to do. There's so much history in the town. It's beautiful. It's right on the ocean. There's a bay there and lighthouses, and it's very picturesque. The other thing about it is that it's like one of those things that nobody knows about. It's one of those, I often liken it like my wife and I had done a road trip a few years back. And we went through the southeastern corner of Idaho. And again, what's in Idaho? It's probably one of the country's best kept secrets. Idaho's beautiful. And Maine is very much the same way. It's just got so much history. And it was great for she and I just to go on our own, left the kids behind with their grandparents for the long weekend. And she and I just hung out and just ate so much lobster in the first 2 days that by the third day I needed a hamburger. Midwest guy, got to have my beef. So, and that's a lot of seafood. All right. I'm going to shift gears a little bit here. So as some of you may or may not have noticed, there's going to be a new format on this channel. And if you're continuing to listen to this, I appreciate that, on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. That's not going to change. You won't even notice the change if you're just listening to this. However, I've had some friends get a hold of me and say, hey, it's great that you're putting these interviews up on YouTube, but maybe you want your podcast to be a little bit longer. And I tell them, yeah, the interviews are the only thing I'm putting on YouTube. If you want to hear the rest of the podcast, you have to go and download it on one of the, it's only available in audio, the full podcast. And I got a serious amount of feedback saying you need to think about doing a video podcast as well. So here we are. For those of you listening in audio, thank you very much. I love the support. Keep going with that. And some of you wanted to see this on YouTube. So here I am recording myself on video for YouTube as well. So the full podcast videos will also be available on YouTube. And in exchange, hopefully you're going to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and we can really turn this into a platform that can grow and really turn into something else. All right. I want to talk about my book for a minute. Now, if you are on any of my social medias at all, you know I've been plugging this book like crazy. It has been a passion love labor of mine that I have finally completed. And not only did it finally get completed, it got published a few weeks back, and it made it made two Amazon bestseller lists in the first day. Now, what I want to say about that is thank you. If you're listening to this and you purchased my book, or you were one of the ones that got really lucky and were able to download it for free when I first pushed it out, I can't thank you enough. It really means a lot to here's the deal. The book published on a Wednesday. My wife and I left for Maine on Thursday. So naturally, as I'm traveling, I'm looking at the sales. I'm kind of trying to stay abreast of everything that's happening. And I was floored about how many sales that I had. Floored. And I could not have become a best-selling author had it not been for my supporters. And so thank you for that. And it's really been a dream come true. I mean, really, it really has. And so I'm overwhelmed with joy. The book is still available. It's going to stay available. It's on Amazon. You can get the paperback for $11.99, and you can get the Kindle version for $2.99. So depending on how you want to read, it's a quick read. It's about 100 pages. It's getting some really, really good feedback. If you've read it already and you have not, head over to the back to the Amazon product page to leave me a 5-star review. I would really appreciate if you could do that. That really helps the numbers and the exposure of the book continue to climb. And I want to keep that thing going. So again, just overwhelmed with joy that my book became a bestseller in a matter of a day, and it stayed there for a few days. And so, again, thank you for that. Now, I have a very special guest for you today. I interviewed a friend of mine. He and I have known each other for about 10 years. We went to the same sales training academy when we both worked for, well, most of you know this already. We both worked for UPS, and we were sales guys for that company. So we went to the same training. Now, he is from Louisiana and I am from Minnesota. And so we met while training in Louisville. You're going to see it here in a minute. He's got this like infectious persona about him where you're just drawn to him. And if you're not drawn to his appearance, you're drawn to his voice. I mean, he's got a great story. He was a veteran. He's an Air Force veteran. He was a pro bull rider, so he did rodeo, and that's really where my fascination started to begin. He chased the dream of doing rodeo full time, and he did it for quite a while. And at some point, as these stories go, he had to figure out when he couldn't rodeo anymore, he had to figure out what the rest of his life was going to look like. And for those of you that don't know, that's what this podcast is really all about. I'm interviewing people who have really lived their dream. And at some point, their dream ended, and they had to pivot and figure out what the rest of their life was going to look like. So I've been very blessed to have these amazing storytellers that have these great backgrounds and experiences that they can come and share with you, because we don't often talk about that piece. We don't often talk about that pivot piece. We don't talk about, we get told our entire lives, you can be whatever you want to be, until one day you can't. And then you have to figure out what change is going to look like. And that piece right there, that's what we're covering here on this podcast, at least for season 1. Oh, that's right. There's going to be a season 2. I've already kicked around some ideas for that. We're going to have some fun with it. But back to my guest today, was in the rodeo. When his rodeo career ended, he really threw himself into his work as a sales guy, but never really veered too far from wanting to pursue a second dream, which is what he's doing today. And he's actually a traveling musician. And I'm going to let him tell you the story because and only the way that he can. But he was a fantastic interview. Bear with me a little bit on some of the audio issues that he and I had during that interview process. I've tried to fix them the best I can before this went live, but there are a few hiccups here and there, so just hang in there. But yeah, here it is, my interview with Kenny Wade. Well, this has been a long time in the making, and I certainly appreciate you being here, but I've got Kenny Wade with me, ladies and gentlemen. Well, this is an
What's
audio
left of him? Yes,
podcast.
sir.
He's tipping his cowboy hat. If you're listening to this, he's in his full cowboy apparel today, ladies and gentlemen, which I appreciate, having been a cowboy myself at one point in my career.
I'll tell you, Mike, I wouldn't have done you any different, brother. Full meal deal.
So for those of you listening, Kenny and I go way back. Actually, you and I met. Gosh, it was almost 10 years ago to the day, and he and I at that time worked for the same company, and we were both training to be salespeople, and so we both ended up in Louisville, Kentucky, together doing some training. And I was always just drawn to your personality. You've got this gift to be able to connect with people very, very quickly. And you've got an amazing story behind all of that. And as I was building this podcast, I was making a very short list of people who I had to have as guests on this show. And you certainly made that list. And I realized that over those 10 years, you and I touched base just several times. We were both still working for the same organization, but you and I have navigated change quite a bit in our lives, and certainly had to do that over the last 10 years as well. So it's great to see you and great to have you on the show.
Absolutely, man. Glad to be here, man. Glad to get the invite, man. Just ready to jump into it. Like everything else, man. It's wide open with me. So this thing's wide open. This life, we get one chance, man. So there's a lot of change, a lot of things going on. So yeah, let's get it on.
So let's start from the beginning. Where did you grow up?
Man, I grew up in Welch, Louisiana, a little small farming community, about 1,500 people between Lake Charles and Lafayette, Louisiana. To give people proximity, pretty much the only town they know in Louisiana is New Orleans. So I'm about 2.5 hours west of New Orleans on Interstate 10. So I'm straight west of New Orleans.
Okay.
Almost to Texas. So right in the heel of the boot, we call it.
Got it. And when you're going through school and things like that, talk to me a little bit about what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, man, if you want to get serious, I want to be an astronaut.
Well, okay.
But not to be an astronaut. Yeah, just the same little kid, small town dream kind of things. I loved football and I loved playing football when I was growing up. Like I said, just hunting, fishing, kid stuff, and of course working on the farm at a young age. You're brought up in that, so ethic and things like that. So typical small town upbringing. Good people came from good people.
Did you play football all the way through school?
I did until my 10th grade year, and that's part of what we'll pretty much talk about with transition.
Okay.
In life.
Well, let's start there then. So 10th grade, you'd been playing football up to that point. What happened to where you couldn't play football for the rest of your high school life?
Well, it wasn't that I couldn't. It is that I had to make a decision. And it goes back to pretty much my relationship with my dad. So my relationship with dad was always really close. And he liked football, but he didn't love it. Right. But he rode bulls and he rode bareback horses. So rodeo was his thing. And even though we were well connected before, I just found we had a neighbor that started bucking bulls down the road from my house. And this is I was about 14. So I'd say 7th, 8th grade, I started getting on some steers and then small bulls. So throughout that time up until my 10th grade year, I've been doing both. So I was playing football, which the season kind of coordinates itself. And then I was rodeoing as well. And then there was just a jumping point. Some friends of mine got hurt and they were treated a little different from the team, and I kind of saw that. And, rodeo made me really close with my dad. Even though I love football, I loved riding bulls too and bareback horses. So, that relationship with him was a factor. So I just decided to go that direction, man, and I was a smaller guy, 5'9". I was probably 155, 160, back in that time. So it just lent myself more to, not that I was a bad football player. I was a pretty decent football player, but I was doing really well riding bulls. I mean, I made state finals all 4 years that I rodeoed, and so again, I got led toward that decision, I guess is the best way to put it.
So up to this point, you from Louisiana, you played football up until 10th grade. Dad was in the rodeo, and you thought that rodeo was going to be something that you might be able to connect with your dad a little bit more on, and decided to try your hand at it. So talk to me about what is that process like? So playing football, and then now you're transitioning to rodeo. What for all of us who really don't understand what that lifestyle is like, explain that to me.
Rodeo just is one of those things you're gonna either love it or you're not gonna do it. I mean, it's it's the same, I guess, general feeling as wrestling. You got to be committed. You've got to be involved with what's happening. It's 100% commitment. When you put your hand in that rope to go get on that bull, that's it. My old man used to tell me, he said, it's you and the bull. You can lie to everybody but the bull. That bull's in there. You're in there. You got to work together. You got to make a score. You got to make a ride to make a score. So just to get into some general, I guess, ground rules as far as rodeo goes, it's an 8-second ride. If you don't make an 8-second ride, you don't get a score. So that's the first order of business. Then you got to make your ride. And, of course, at that point, eject and get away. That's your other job. Then you can worry about the rest of it once you get yourself on the other side of the fence. So, but football, just circling back to that, was more of, I was in a small town and football was life, man. I mean, it's real close to Texas, so it's in the similar vein that you're in a small town. Friday night, man, it's high school football, and that's the king. So I get, and I grew up with my friends, man. I played football since I was in 3rd grade. I mean, I was the kid out there that didn't have real football pants, right? I had like shoulder pads and a helmet, but I didn't have like real football pants till like probably I was in junior high. I was a tough kid, just one of those farm kids, and that's what we raised around there. But again, with that, it just all kind of came together, and then being on the farm too. So that's a couple ways you could have went with that.
Sure. And now, how long did you rodeo for?
Altogether, it's probably about 25 years, man.
Okay.
From the time I started to the time I shut it down.
But in there somewhere, you went into the military, didn't you?
Yeah, I went in at 18.
Okay, so right after high school, so you've been doing rodeo for a few years,
right?
And getting ready to graduate high school and military. So tell me about that a little bit.
Well, graduation, of course, is a transition. I was in a small town, and you pretty much had about 3 options. You could go to work in the plants, you could go to work on the farm, or some kind of menial task job around the town. And unfortunately, my folks at that point in time, my sister just went through an aneurysm. They were left with a lot of medical bills, so they could near about afford to put me through school. Had a couple of rodeo scholarship offers, but they were minimal to Northeast Louisiana and McNeese State to ride bulls. So I chose the military as my option to try to get some college and get some education, get some experience. So I actually signed up when I was 17 because at the time there was a freeze on, so you had to wait a year to process in. So I actually signed up at 17. At 18, this is 1990, graduated from high school, probably about 2 months, and then I went in to basic training.
And which branch was that?
San Antonio, Texas.
Was it Air Force?
Air Force, yes, sir.
Air Force. Okay. Now, during this time, I understand that you're doing a lot of singing now. When did you understand, or have you always enjoyed music, or when did you really begin to sing?
So that's part of the rodeo story and the military story. So I can bring all that back together.
Yeah.
So, it just, and I can preface the whole rest of this podcast. Everything that I've done in my life from Jump Street till right now has led to the next thing and has always prepared me for the next thing. and I lean on those experiences, and I lean on that, even though it's a different situation, just the ability to preface change, and what do you do with it? How do you maintain positivity? And then, shortcut, the distinction is if you embrace it and move forward with it, a lot of times you'll be successful sooner and faster. And listen, that's why you got 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? You listen to other people, find out what's going on. But so I get back to high school to military. I get in the military and I go through basic training and I go through my tech school. And this is probably about a 3-month period of time while I get assigned to my permanent party station in the Air Force. Well, it's in Rantoul, Illinois. So it's about 45 minutes north of Champaign-Urbana University, Illinois. I get there and immediately I try to find, hey man, who's riding bulls around here? Who's bucking? Who's, where can I get into some rodeo at? Right. So I hit the couple of local country bars to kind of see, hey, what's happening, and ended up finding, and I don't recall what Ike's last name was, but he owned this place in Champaign. And I met up with the guy who was the rodeo coach for University of Illinois. He put me in touch with him. So I got a hold of those guys, and we started. They had a mechanical bull, and they had a bucking machine. They had all kind of stuff. So I got in with those guys and started rolling. But with Ike, I had always been a DJ or had always been around music in some form or fashion my entire life, right? So I knew a lot of music, grew up with a lot of music. My folks were a very eclectic musical taste. I mean, we had everything. It wasn't just, hey, we got 2 types of country music, country and Western, right? It's like we did everything, R&B, soul, rock and roll, everything from Elvis to the Beatles to everything else. So I was really fortunate to grow up with that kind of background. So fast forward into this deal. Started rodeoing with the guys from U of I, and this guy Ike needed a DJ, and he needed a guy to sing with his house band 4 days a week. So it worked out perfect for me. My military schedule, I worked 7:30 to 4:30 Monday through Friday. I was a hospital troop. I did physical therapy. It's actually what my degree's in, is in physical therapy. So I would sing with the house band Monday through Thursday. I would rodeo Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then make it back. Of course, this is the early 90s, right? So line dancing is humongous. Well, I would DJ for line dancing on Sunday evenings when I'd come back. So it was a pretty hectic schedule, work, playing music, rodeo, come back, play music. So that's pretty much how that evolved, with beginning to start singing with bands.
Now, it sounds like you're a jack of all trades. I mean, that's a lot to take on. That's, being in the military is no easy task, and let's not gloss over the idea of rodeo being an easy day at the office either. And then the singing piece, it's interesting to me that you had your hands in so many different things. Why do you think that is?
Because you know me, man, and I'm like 100 miles an hour. Like the 50-year-old version and the 20-year-old version of me, I mean, I'm still wide open, and people freak out sometimes. It's like, man, like, I can't believe you're 50 years old. And I talk like I'm 18, but it's like, I just needed, and not even to fill space. I just wanted to have fun, and that's what I was having fun doing. So, I was able to put it all together, thankfully, and keep everything going. I think that's also another interesting part of change, is to be able to shift gears and move between tasks, and still be effective in the task that you're in, and dedicate full focus to where you're at that particular time, being in the moment kind of deal, and I was able to switch gears and say, okay, well, this is singing Kenny, and this is rodeo Kenny, and this is DJ Kenny, and this is military Kenny. It's just compartmentalization, I guess, but still the same dude. I mean, I'm the same dude across the board, and I think you know that, and you know me for long enough. I mean, I'm the same dude you met 10 years ago, hopefully a little better, but ultimately the same core person. That
Yeah, and
never.
I think one of the things that I think is very interesting about this story is that usually when people are climbing verticals, whatever that vertical looks like, it begins to be a part of their self-identity. It certainly happened to me as a professional wrestler. I was Mike the Wrestler. So it's very interesting to me that you didn't have that. It doesn't sound like you had that issue. You weren't Kenny the Air Force guy or Kenny the rodeo guy. You were just Kenny, and you were just out there trying to make your way in the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's part of the identification and even and say rodeo or singing or whatever the case may be, is to be able to identify with yourself, and I think other people can identify with that also when it's genuine, right? I mean, like, you're a genuine person, I'm a genuine person. You talk to Mike, you get Mike Kinney, right? You talk to Kenny, you get Kenny, right? And I think people ultimately appreciate that, because it's not an easy thing to do, to be zoned into you, man, without being, to be introspective without being self-consumed, or what's the word I'm looking for, uh narcissistic.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's a great point.
That's a tough road to walk,
It
and
is.
just, but I guess going back to my background, man, it's just that simple country mentality. Just be a good person, man. If you be a good person, you do what you're supposed to do. Not that I always have, but I tried. That things will come across, and things will go the right way for you.
Sure. Now, being in the military, you undoubtedly had to navigate a significant amount of change, unless you didn't stay in one place, right? I'm sure that you had to move around a little bit.
No, part of that, also, I mean, I stayed in the same place for 18 years growing up, right?
Okay.
So, same small town, went to school with the same kids I graduated with, class of 71 people. I had never navigated the kind of change that we're about to talk about. I leave home, go to San Antonio, not terrible, been to Texas, had an idea what was happening. I'd been rodeoing on the road, as a young dude. So, I mean, I went to California and I went other places. So even as a 16, 17-year-old, I knew how to travel. Also, sage advice from my dad: don't get your butt in anything you can't get your own butt out of, right? So in other words, mind your B's and Q's, not going to get into trouble. So I get to San Antonio. Of course, it's basic training. Very first thing, they're breaking you down, man. It's like, we're going to tell you what to do. We're going to tell you how to eat. We're going to tell you how to sleep. We're going to tell you how to tie your shoelaces, everything, for everything. And then, which is a transition from doing whatever you want to do to doing everything the way they say to do exactly. And I mean, when I say exactly, there's no in between. So transition from that to my tech school, well, we went through what's called a phase program. So you had certain phases, like you weren't to be out of uniform on your floor in phase one, and you couldn't go to the chow a certain time. There were certain rules. So what they did, basically took you from basic training, and phased you into a more, I guess, a role where you're allowed to do stuff on your own. You're starting to make your own decisions again, right? Because there is that mentality of, when you come out of basic training, I mean, you're a machine. You're doing whatever they say, exactly how they say it when they say it. So, I thought it was a great way to transition you back into a self-thought process, right? Because you weren't in that in basic training. So going through that phase program in tech school got me back to, I'd say within the second month, pretty much back to normal. Although you have that discipline and that background that they give you. So I moved from my tech school. I actually came home on leave. I was able to spend 2 weeks at home before I went to my first permanent party duty station. Well, when I get my orders coming out of basic training, they say, well, you're going to Chanute Air Force Base, Illinois, which is no longer an Air Force base. It shut down. I'm like, where's Illinois?
You didn't have anything to do with that base shutting down, did you?
No, I held the lock on the door, though. I was there the very last day. I was actually part of the ceremony to close the base. No, that was all lined out before I got there.
Got it.
Actually,
Okay.
yeah, actually, it was slotted, I want to say the year before I got there. So I stayed there 3 years and then they shut it down. And actually, that's another part of transition. We'll talk about that a little bit, getting out of there. But yes, so I get permanent party and I'm in Illinois and I'm like flying over Illinois and it's just a bunch of squares, man. I mean, it's like, I don't know what the North's supposed to look like, right? I mean, I don't know because we're swamps and trees and, it's flat, but it's different. Anyway, I get there and, a lot of change in navigating is now I'm going from being in, a school environment to actually doing my job, which is physical therapy at that point. And then, getting a schedule together, kind of learning how people are there, connecting with people there, trying to make friends, just to get a circle of people and stay out of trouble. Because I'm 19 at the time, and I'm 800 miles away from home, right? So, and at that time, even though I was a pretty wide open guy, I tried to make sure I didn't get myself into trouble if I could help it. So pretty much get lined out with my job, get that, situation rolling. And then, like I say, reached out, and that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, getting into the singing, getting into the bull riding, getting in the rodeo. And I was able to continue that while I was in the military because I had done it prior to. And that's one thing I had to go talk to my commanding officer and say, hey, look, man, I ride bulls and I want to continue to do it. So I had to sign this, these papers and all this other stuff. So I was able to continue on to be able to do that. And then, of course, carry on through that. Fast forward 3 years, I'm engaged to a girl from up there. She actually was a cheerleader at University of Illinois. She wanted to stay there to cheer her last year. I got my transfer orders out to go to Montana, but because I stayed to help close the base, they got changed to go to Tampa, Florida. So 3 years in, I go to Tampa, Florida. And of course, at this particular point, I've got a good idea about singing. I got a good idea about rodeo, and I got a pretty good idea about the military. Although a transition there was no flying mission in Illinois. And in Tampa, there was a flying mission. So, I mean, it was actual, you could be deployed. So, I mean, there's just the military. It's more military at this point. Like in Illinois, it was a training base. There's really no threat to deploy. Whereas when you get to Tampa, there's immediate, you could be deployed. Let's just put it that way without divulging too much information. So I get there, same thing. And part of transition is just like, okay, well, I'm going to use what I learned in Illinois. When I got to Illinois, this worked, right? Started meeting people, started figuring out where things were, started doing, prefacing my identity there. It's like, hey, I'm going to be Kinney in Tampa, right? So, and it's a big place because I come from Illinois and it's a very small place where everybody, knows everybody, which is a good place to be because that was kind of more towards how I grew up, right? Get to Tampa and it's like 2 million people. Like you don't see the same people, so it's like, holy moly. But yeah, starting to navigate that. So got in with some good guys, started rodeoing, didn't sing or do any kind of music right off the bat. I was pretty much focused on rodeoing, and then being in the military, obviously, so that was Tampa. Now in that time, distance led to me and the girl I was engaged with breaking it off. And, that was just an unfortunate incident of distance, kind of thing. So I had to transition through that. And then, from being engaged to not being engaged. So I'm in Tampa and I'm engaged. And then, of course, I'm there and I'm not. So
right.
For about a year and a half, man, lived on about 4 hours of sleep. And if I wasn't, rodeo and I was going out. So just yeah, it was just a wide open time.
How long were you in the military at this point? Or how long were you in the military before you got out?
I was in 10. And,
10 years. Okay.
Yeah, I transitioned base to base about every 3 years.
Okay.
So it was 3 and 3 and 3, and then you could figure out that odd year in between. So I'm in Tampa 3 years, and then I transitioned to Dallas out in Texas. So I
All
ended
the
up in
while
Dallas.
still doing rodeos and still trying to sing or not singing?
Yeah. So Tampa. So probably in the last 8 months that I'm there, I went to NCO school, and they had me sing the national anthem, which I was very humbled because my classmates wanted me to sing it, but the commander said, "Hey, that dude sounds too country, almost like it'd be disrespecting the national anthem, right?" But my whole class said, "Hey, we want Kenny to sing the national anthem for graduation because the general is going to be there and all kind of stuff." So they stuck up for me, man, and I was able to do that, and I was very proud of that. To be able to sing with it. Well, there were some guys there that had a band, so they invited me to be in the band. So and these guys are alternative, right, at this time. With some, they did some Jimi Hendrix and things like that, but you got a cowboy singing alternative in Jimi Hendrix. Well, we started doing pretty good, and coming together. So this is probably my last 8 to 10 months in Tampa, right? So I'm rodeoing. I'm probably singing. I mean, we had probably 2, 3 gigs a month, not in anything, but we practice about once a week. So it wasn't anything too involved, but it was pretty good. It was a good little band. And unfortunately, I sounded country, and that's just the way it is. You know what I mean? So, but we had a good time with it, and we played some bigger places down there, Ybor City, and so I kind of learned how to be in front of bigger crowds with more people. As far as singing goes, rodeo, I mean, I rode in front of 25, 30,000 people, whereas with singing, I mean, I probably max I ever sang in front of was maybe 500 people or less.
Okay. I think there's a lot of change that needs to be navigated as you move station to station. So you're in Illinois, you go to Tampa and other locations as well. So it's almost as if by the time you get settled in, you're having to make some more changes. How were you? What was going through your mind at the time? You get caught, or were you prepared for that in some way?
Well, take you back to the original, and I think it was probably the toughest when I was in Illinois because I was a guy who, like I said, I grew up with the same people. So when I left there, it tore at my heart because these are my friends that I grew up with, and now I'm leaving to go somewhere else. Although you got to grow up, right? But then working with the same people in Illinois for 3 years and getting those deep friendships and those more stronger bonds with those people, and then you leave again, and it's just like, okay. So you get there, and it's like, man, this sucks, but we got to do it, and you go in the place again. Well, you get to Tampa, or to my second base, and again, you learn to meet people, and you learn to open up and get good friendships. But then all of a sudden, guess what? You're pulled out of that, and you're having to do it again. So every route that you dropped there, guess what? You just ripped it up, and now we're going to Dallas Air Force Base, Texas. So we're going to Texas, and which was a permissive PCS, and that's another part of transitioning in the story is that, man, I just had to get out of Tampa, Florida, and I'm gonna tell you why, because it was too fast. It was just too fast for me. Not that I didn't particularly care for Tampa. Man, I love the city. The people were great. It's just it was really hard to rodeo out of there because you had to drive 8 to 10 hours to really get to the prime real estate. So where you were rodeoing. So it's like, like booking a territory in wrestling. We had a circuit that we rode, and I had to be those places, and it's 12 hours to get here and 8 hours to get there, and it's just it just wears on you. Whereas in Texas, you're 2 hours here, you could do two rodeos in the same day. You could do 3 rodeos in the same day if you want. And I just thought about that as far as a business move and chasing my dream. It would be better off to be in Texas. So I put in for a permissive move to Texas, and they laughed at me. In fact, the lady at personnel laughed at me. She says, "This will never happen." And I said, okay. Well, see, so I talked to the chief of my career field, and he says, "Look, man, I can't do nothing to get it to my desk, but if it gets to my desk, I'll approve it." Right. So, long story short, that happened, and I was able to go and set those papers in front of that lady and say, "I'm going to Texas." So,
an important lesson here: those who ask for more get more. So there you go.
I don't like no too much. Although you will hear it in life, but and it's always no if you don't ask, right? It's always no. So
Right.
thankfully, man, I was able to get out there and transition fast forward to Dyess, or to my Air Force base in Texas. It was a slower town. Things closed at 12:30, 1 o'clock on the weekend. There were good rodeo cowboys there, good people to connect with. The drives were way shorter. I was able to make more headway. I was able to start going to some bigger rodeos out west because I could factor them into what I was doing. So Dyess was really the place that I needed to be at the time when I was doing that. So that's about a 3-year span there. And then it came out that they were doing a forced withdrawal or forced drawdown, kind of like I don't know how to explain it. It's basically you're gonna like a severance package, right? They're gonna take your severance and you're gonna get out. So at 10 years, I'm like, with military in 10 years, look, if you stay one more than 10, really you should stay 20. I was at that point. It's like, man, I'm rodeo and I'm doing really good. I could try to make it. They were going to give me some money to get out. So it's like, okay, next transition in, let's get out, right? Let's go ahead and do life. We've done 10 years of military. And that's the other thing to talk about transition, and two more important numbers, 3 and 10 in my life, right? Every 3 years I've moved pretty much since I've been 18, with the exception of the last 10 years I've been here and the 18 years that I, lived at home. But then 10-year cycles on what I've done as far as life goes. And we'll just look at my work life. Did physical therapy for 10 years, did UPS operations for 10 years, then UPS sales for 10 years. Can I say UPS on here?
Yeah, you can say whatever you want. We're just not going to talk trash.
I got you. No. We're good, man. Hey, I'm good. No, man. We can talk about that towards the end too. But yeah. So moving every 3 years, but changing, I guess, career paths almost every 10 years and 30 years. And I've been in work, and then of course getting into retirement, and we'll talk about that too. But yeah, getting back to Dyess and getting out. Man, I was in Texas, and I planned to stay in Texas, because I had a buddy of mine that was going to get me in Texas Youth Corrections, this dude I rodeo with, which was really good because it's a 4-10 schedule, so I could rodeo on the weekends, man, and medical and all that good stuff. And I was actually going to a rodeo in Florida, and went home. My dad was having trouble, and they thought it was his gallbladder, right? Well, come to find out, we go to his oncologist, and he's got pancreatic cancer. So, yeah. So I go and hit the rodeo that I'm hitting in Florida. I come back through, and I was actually I'd bought a owner finance house out there in the little town I was staying at in Texas. And I told the lady, I was like, look, found out about my dad. I need to get back home. So she was really cool. She was in New Mexico, I think. Anyway, yeah, she was good. Like, hey, I did a bunch of work to the house because, like, basically that's what I did during the week. I did a bunch of renovation. Like, I'm no carpenter, right? But I can fix stuff. So I did the floors, and I, fixed the roof, and I fixed it up. So, she pretty much says, look, we'll just, with all the work you did, we'll let you out and go on back home. So this is end of 2001.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop you. I'm gonna back you up just a little bit.
Sure.
When you were getting out of the military, what state were you in at the time? Was that Texas?
I was in Texas.
Okay, so in your mind, as you're leaving, that's got to be, first of all, being there 10 years and then being like, okay, now I need to make this significant change. It's a new career path. Were you comfortable with it? How did you navigate that? And what were your expectations when you got out? Was it easy for you? Was it a hard transition?
Well, it was hard, and I'll tell you why. Because you're so institutionalized to the system, right? I mean, like, I'm 18 and I knew that life, and then of course when you're in the military, you know that life, and it's an institutionalization. Like you're comfortable in that lifestyle. You know what to expect. You know, I mean, there are unexpected things that happen, but your life is pretty much I mean, there's a dictation to your days, your weeks. It's very organized, right? So so yeah, it was very difficult, but in my heart, that was the right thing to do. Fast forward, of course, with the rodeo, and we'll talk about that. And then what happens with my dad, like I got out, you know, with these other intentions, but had I not gotten out, then guess what? I don't get to spend 10 months with my dad before he passes away, right? Because I'm going through red tape with the military trying to get back home. So it was the right move to make, even though in hindsight, I didn't know that at the time. I mean, I got out because I wanted to go rodeoing, and it seemed like the thing to do. And the other thing, Mike, and I'll tell you about transition, and this is very important. If I can make any very important point, be confident enough in yourself to bet on yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like,
it does.
confident enough, and sometimes you got to pull the trigger when you don't know everything, right? You got to be confident enough in your ability to be able to do things. And if you're not, in my opinion, you're not going to do a whole lot. You know, I mean, and I'm not saying don't make reasonable, you know, choices based on the facts that you're presenting, but you're not going to have all the facts, man. You're not always going to have all the facts, and that's part of transition. You know?
Well, here's where we're at in the story. And I think that's such a great point is that you didn't just one day decide that you wanted to go rodeo full time. What you did is you found a career, you found something stable. That was the military. You were living that life. And on the side, you were chasing this other thing that you had. And we all have these things. Most of us have these things. And even when we can't do them full time, we're still learning the craft. We're trying to network with other people. We're trying to get our names out there and get experience under our belt. So when the time comes, you have the opportunity to be confident in yourself because you've got the experience to do it already. So that's where we're at in the story at this point. You're leaving the military. You're now rodeoing full time. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. Now, this part of the story is near and dear to my heart because, as you know, my dad passed away when I was 19. So you get the news that that your dad is sick. You're saying, okay, stuff needs to go on the back burner. I'm going to head home for a little bit. Walk me through that process.
Yeah, so you know, get back to talking with the lady, and it was great. You know, God bless her. She, let me leave and without any kind of conflict, and was able to get back home. Well, I get back home, and here I am. You know, I'm 28 years old. You know, no real job. I'm just rodeoing. You know, and at this point, I had really kind of until I got home and got situated. I took a couple months off of riding because I didn't know what to expect transitioning back home. You know, and then, I mean, I've been living on my own since I'm 18, and I'm back living in my parents' house, which again I thought was the right decision for me because I wanted to be able to help them in any way I possibly could. And I didn't have a job. I mean, I still had some money at that time, but I mean, it was going away pretty quickly because I'm not winning. I'm not, rodeoing, and I'm not winning money, so I'm not, subbing. And I don't have a lot of bills at this time, which is good and helped me with the transition. So I get home, and my dad, so I'll take you through that. He was still working, man. In fact, he worked till up about 2 weeks before he passed away. And he would go in probably 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. He'd usually get home about, 1:30 in the afternoon. Well, I would take him to chemo treatments and we hang out. So me and him hung out like every day. Well, my brother-in-law, and this is where UPS comes in. I'm probably home about 2, almost 3 months, and I need to get a job. I mean, it's like, you got to get a job, dude. So my brother-in-law is washing trucks at UPS, and he says, hey, man, you should try UPS. So I said, yeah, why not, man? And so anyway, back then it wasn't, computer HR. It was the old school HR, right? So got in front of the HR manager and went for the interview over there in Lake Charles and got hired. So the cool thing about UPS at that point is, which again, change of careers. My degree's in physical therapy now, and I'm going to go to unloading trucks at UPS. But the main reason for doing that is because I can go in from 3 to 8 in the morning. Then guess what? I got time to do something. Then I can be home when my dad gets there, and we can hang out and do things. So UPS, as rough as it is getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go do work, it worked perfectly into what I was doing. And I'll never forget this, man. I had an old 85 Dodge pickup truck. It cost me about $40 to fill up, and I was making $132 a week. And my treat to myself on Friday was buying a cup of coffee that I didn't make myself. But, fast forward, I was, and that's transition too, man. You got, I go from a hospital job where I'm getting paid for what I know to make people better, to humping boxes at UPS, man. And then it's just different. Although, I'm not, I think this knowing me, there's nothing I'm not too proud to do anything. If I got to sweep the floor, man, you tell me to sweep the floor, we'll sweep the floor. Whatever we got to do to get it done. I'm not, this is not me and all this other stuff. So, and transitioning with that. And then, of course, being at UPS and then, watching him go through his deal. And fortunately with him, I say fortunately, he didn't get really sick until about 3 weeks before he passed away. And probably the two hardest things were watching him take his stuff out of it. He drove a big truck. He drove an 18-wheeler. So when I seen him take his stuff out of that truck, I knew it wasn't going to be long, unfortunately, And then, of course, him to passing and then the funeral and not to get into graphic detail, but I was there when he passed away, and I actually gave him CPR as he was passing. So it's pretty tough, but I wouldn't have it any other way. It really pretty intense deal because we were close. Yeah. Man. Ultimately that was my Superman. My dad was my hero.
I totally understand. I really do. So now here you are. The rodeo life is behind you, and you've laid your dad to rest.
Oh, we're not there yet. No,
we're not there yet.
Rodeo,
oh boy,
rodeo still ain't over, but go right ahead.
Okay, so you've laid your dad to rest, and you're working at UPS. Now, I want to just say this as well. If the listeners out there didn't know that I worked for UPS for a long time, and I think we covered that a little bit because that's how you and I met. I did the exact same job that you did when I first started there. I was unloading trucks at 3 o'clock in the morning. The only reason I went and got that job is because my wife saw an ad in the paper, and she knew we needed medical insurance because she was pregnant with our daughter. And she said, you better go. And it worked out perfectly for my life as well, because I'd go unload trucks from 3 to 8 in the morning, and then I'd go to school for the day. I was working on my undergrad. So yeah, that in a lot of ways that the story is, they helped me out when I needed a lot of help too. So now here you are, you are dealing with the change of having lost your father. Where are you at in your head? Where are you going to go at this point?
So talking about the rodeo, man, I went on a tear, like I worked out like a madman, like I was hitting rodeos. It's probably the most successful and lucrative part of my rodeo career as a professional, right? So I'm winning, I'm killing it. And UPS is like, I can't get out of there fast enough on a Friday to hit 3 rodeos on the weekend. And I do this for about, that's 2001 to 2002. So I do this for about a year and a half. Like I'm doing really good, making circuit finals, starting to go to some touring pros, PBR, road PRCA. So that's pro rodeo. So I'm at these bigger deals, heading west, kind of living the dream, and then still being back home to be able to take care of my mom and help her with the transition out, with my dad. And, because they were married, like, I think 28 years when he passed. So yeah, I went on a tear, man. And then fast forward to 2003, I'm starting to wind down. I'm getting some injuries, but not terrible. And then I I got underneath a bull and I broke my collarbone and I broke my foot, which is not terrible, injuries. Something you could come back from 6 to 8 weeks. You're back riding bulls. Well, the dude I was traveling with was a bareback rider. He ended up committing suicide. Yeah. So I'm injured. I'm still working at UPS. He commits suicide. I was going to be a part-time supervisor, and I got promoted, right, at UPS. So it's like I come out of that injury saying, I'm part-time supervisor, just get promoted to full-time supervision. My buddy killed himself. I'm thinking I'm like 35, 34, 35, which is getting long in the tooth to be riding bulls anyway. And I said, well, it's probably time to hang the old spurs up, and I left it at a good place, man. Had I not gone on that tear and had I not done so well and, kind of pushed myself to see, hey, man, exactly what can you do? I might have had an empty spot. Although I will say this, I don't watch rodeo much anymore. I don't talk to old friends that have done it. I got a couple of guys, like I keep in touch with the old rodeo coach from University of Illinois, but I don't go around it, man. I know I left it at a good place, and and nobody can ever take it away from you, man. It's kind of like you're wrestling, right? It's like nobody can ever take away what Mike the wrestler did. You did what you did, and it's all part of who you are.
Yeah, and I treated it a lot like you did as well. When I left, I left and didn't go to shows. I stopped communicating with a number of people that I was friends with on the circuit because, and maybe you're like this too, but here's what I knew was going to happen. I had a very good send-off, big retirement show. Like it was a very big deal. I will never be able to replace that night. And I knew that if I went back to wrestling, I'm not one that likes to talk out of both sides of his mouth. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it, including walking away from things. So I knew I was putting wrestling in my past, and I had to just end that life and be happy with what I got from it. Now, I had a bit of a struggle because, again, I told you that I identified myself as Mike the wrestler for so long that I didn't know who I was when I left wrestling. So talk to me about that. You were in the rodeo for so long. How did you deal with putting it in the rear view?
I threw myself into UPS.
Okay.
Which is real easy to do, right? And you're
yeah, it
UPS,
is.
So at the time I get promoted, that's right when Katrina happens, right? So I go to my Alexandria, which was my first building as a full-time supervisor to run the preload there, and Katrina hits. So we're working 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, just to try to get the district back on track. So I think I had a good friend in UPS to help me to say, okay, there was just so much going on. You couldn't even think how much with everything going on. You were just thinking about, hey, man, can I get 4 hours of sleep and get back to work, right? So that really helped in the transition, I think, looking back. Just to throw myself into UPS, and identify, with UPS. And there was just so much to learn with UPS. And I know you old UPSers, so man, there's just so much to learn. There's so much that you can be good at, and it helps you with everything else. Kind of like the military, right? The corporate structure and the corporate strategies help you in life if you can transition some of that information back to what you're doing corporately versus personally, so that helped me to transition out of rodeo. Not to say that I didn't miss it, and not to say that I didn't, I guess at that time I wouldn't have gone back to it. But like I said, man, I think I left. I'm like you, man. I had that deal. Now, I will say this. I got hurt and I went out like that. It's probably not the way I wanted to go out, but life has its way of helping you to get past that part of it, and like I said, I can always be proud of what I did. And, I would have probably rather gone out, making a ride, throw my hat in the air and, taking off, but it just happened, man. And I'm okay with that. But I guess to answer your question, being 900 miles an hour at UPS for almost 2 years, kind of helped to soften the blow,
Sure. Yeah. And that's the other thing too, is people need to remember in any profession, especially one that's as physical as anything like a rodeo or pro wrestling or any sport or whatever it is, injuries are going to be a leading indicator that maybe you should start looking at other career paths. And so that was really when I got hurt, and I really got hurt in my shoulder. I had a couple of surgeries on it. I knew that it wasn't going to be the same after that. And so, yeah, that was my tell as well. So now here you are, you're working at UPS diligently. And I know, having been there for as long as I did, sometimes they'll move you around a little bit. Did you have to do any moves for UPS?
Yeah, actually getting into that first move and UPS, and in 10 years, I probably moved about every 2 to 3 years in that 10-year period as well. So I went to Alexandria first, and they were supposed to go on PASS, which is the preload assist system. I went to Mississippi and learned it. So they had been supposed to go on it, but they were still old school, loading with charts and all that other stuff anyway. So I go to run the preload over there. Again, Katrina hit, so I'm not only running the preload, like on the weekends I'm going to Jackson, or the weekends I'm going to Pascagoula, or wherever they need me, I'm hot shotting down there to go just lend a hand to try to get the district back on track. Well, the dust settles from Katrina and things start to normalize. Well, I had done so well with being other places and being successful at making operations work. My old manager, who at the time becomes the new district manager, decides I'm going to be the new hotshot fix-it guy in these different buildings that aren't making the numbers, right? When we talk about the numbers, I'm sure everybody's got metrics in what they do, but UPS numbers drive the business, right? So I would go into, and I probably at this point, I'm transitioning between buildings about every year and a half. It'd take me about a year and a half to get preloads running, on-road operations running in these smaller buildings. And even in some of the bigger buildings, like I was in Shreveport, probably had 150 people. I was in Ruston, I probably had 25 people, right? So I was managing people, managing the process, getting the process running and working, and the numbers, going. And then they would move me and stick somebody else in that building, right? Well, that kind of got old in a way, man, because I wanted to find a home. At this point in my mind, I want to be a building manager, right? So I'm like, well, I need to find me a place to, an opportunity. But I've proven myself to say, okay, well, in these smaller operations, he can make it run. Bigger operations, he can make it run. I have the distinct, and I don't know, some other people may be able to say this, but I worked every building in the state of Louisiana, a handful in Texas, and most of the buildings in Mississippi. So, through those 3 states, I pretty much touched almost every building for UPS that was in there.
Wow.
So I learned a lot while I was doing that.
Yeah, it's hard not to.
Yeah, so the transition in there was just from between, okay, well, I'm going to try, I'm learning. Now I know. Now I need to put what I learned to practical application somewhere where I can advance my career, and get into a next level manager position.
Okay. So at this point, let's just do a bit of a review. You are a gypsy, for lack of a better term. I mean, think about that. From the age of 18 all the way up into this point in your story, you're well into your 30s. You're moving quite a bit and doing a very good job with it, navigating through all that change. That is extremely hard to do. So now you're getting to the point where you want something a bit more stable. What were your next steps?
Yeah, so I was actually able to come across the opportunity to run a smaller building over in Natchez, Mississippi, which is the next step to becoming a building manager, right? But I also felt like I had an application in sales, so I took the sales test at that point in time. So I would have an option as far as, okay, well, if the building manager aspect doesn't work out, or at least I can get into sales and say, okay, well, let's try that, as a doing something different, because I've been in operations at that point for about 8 years. And I always look for that next challenge, kind of the next change. And I thought that I had an application in sales. So I go to Natchez and I am running the building over there, doing well. So I'm there. It's about 2.5 years. Meet this girl back in Lafayette, which is back more where I'm from, and we start we're pretty serious at that point. Well, there was an opportunity to come back home to step down from managing the building to go back to running the preload. I was getting married, so we get engaged. So that's another transition. So I'm getting engaged. I'm living in a camper trailer because I've been living in a camper trailer or in a hotel for the last 7 years. So, I want a house. I want to, at this time I'm 36, 37 years old. I said, well, it's time to and it felt like the right thing to do at the time. So I get back to Lafayette, transition out of being the building manager back to running a preload, which was interesting. And I'm there. And then the opportunity comes for me to get into sales. The salespeople, the one lady's retiring. Another guy's transitioning out to Houston. So I got back with the HR people and say, hey, look, I took this test, way a long time ago. I was qualified. What's the opportunity? So then I interview with Karen Bird, which is my boss for the whole time I was in sales. Well, I take that back. She was my district manager. Then she was my manager. So she was over me in some form of capacity while I was in sales. And got the opportunity to be in sales. So I transitioned out of operations into sales. And that's kind of where me and Mike pick up, right? So,
yeah,
I actually, about 6 months before that, I ended up in finance as a path to sales. And then from finance, I ended up in pricing, right? For about 3 months each. So I learned the finance part, earned the pricing aspect, of which they said, hey, you're going to help us fix pricing. And then I got a chance to go to sales school. So I was even transition within the transition of going from operations to sales, as full-time salesperson.
Yeah, and that's very hard to do because, like you, I took a number of rotations at UPS, and within each one, from the first day you arrive in any one of those departments, they expect you to pick up the material like you'd known it your whole life and go. Like that is it. There is no downtime to learn it. It's almost baptism by fire because you're just learning so fast. Absolutely. And honestly, I kind of like that environment because it didn't give me the opportunity to slow things down. I mean, I was right in it. I knew the pace that everything was going to be going. And so it was go, go, go at all times. I loved it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. And learn on the fly, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's what makes a UPSer. I guess what makes UPSers unique is the fact that you're able to manage. I mean, drinking from a fire hose is another, you're able to manage all that and still be somewhat successor while the pressure's on, right? Because the numbers have to turn every day. Like you play a game every day. You win or lose every day. So, so you're in it to win it every day. And then there's a certain sense of fulfillment in that, and then talking transition between operations and sales. Sales is just different from operations at UPS. And you know that because we're both operations guys and we're both sales guys. So in operations at UPS, it's just a different frame of mind and a different mindset. But if you carry that operation mindset into sales, you're going to be successful. I mean, you are because you're looking at once you figure out what you need to look at and how you need to get there and what it takes to make your metrics happen, then you're going to be successful.
Right.
Because you got that, and I don't know other way to say it. You got that dog mentality.
Yeah.
You got to have that dog mentality to be successful.
And it certainly, you're right. And it certainly goes back to any profession, any vertical, as long as you're learning along the way, that's the most important thing. And learn what to do and what not to do is also vitally important because those things will teach you more than any book. Like experience for me was always king. And so learning those pieces along the way and working for some really great people too, learning what they were doing and trying to, model some of their behavior. It was a great environment.
Absolutely. I say this too, and this is just something in my personal being is like, I'm not going to let UPS or anybody or anything expect more out of me than I expect out of myself.
Right.
So that becomes that self-worth aspect and that identification aspect that says, I'm going to believe in me first. Why? Because I know I can't, because I know I can. And if I can't, then I'm going to ask somebody who can, or who somebody who knows. I'm going to be humble enough to say I don't know what I don't know, and then we're going to go figure it out. You know, a lot of people, man, you just gotta have that certain amount of humility, but you also got to have confidence at the same time. So it's a balance, you know.
Yeah.
Balance.
Now, one thing that we forgot to mention along this path. Now, rodeo is behind you at this point.
Yeah.
Had you picked up the microphone to start singing again during any of this?
So I have not, and we'll back up to Tampa, Florida. So, and this is going to be a really poor part of the story. I get in a fist fight with the bass player on stage at my last show. He was just being a jerk, and I'm out there in front, and I'm doing my job, which is singing and entertaining and doing my thing, and kept on. And I'm not that guy, but also I'm only going to take what I can take. And, you know, so at this point, I say I'm never doing this again. I'm not doing this. This is not what I'm here for. I kind of found that those situations presented themselves, you know, just animosity kind of deal. And I just wasn't into that because I was so used to rodeo where we were against each other, but we were also together. We may not have been on the same team, but man, if you need me to pull your bull rope, I'm there, you know, and I want you to win just as bad as I want to win. I guarantee I got to eat. But I mean, if I don't, you do, hey man, fantastic. And that's not what I got out of that situation with that particular band. The two bands I was in prior to that was always older guys, and they were real good natured. And anyway, it was just a bad scene. So fast forward, and this gets into the divorce part of what's happening. You know, my wife comes in one day and says, basically, man, that's it. I want a divorce. You know, no headwind, no, you know, I didn't have any ideas. So starting to work through that, you know, I just found myself kind of in a gap, you know, and we had two houses. So the one house was a rent house. And then, of course, the other house was the one we were living in. So moved her into the rent house. And then I was living in the main house until we sold it. Well, my father-in-law, ex-father-in-law, what I still call my father-in-law, great dude, man, helped me to he let me live in his shop. And so I'm trying to make sure she's okay, and she's got a son. I'm trying to make sure they're okay. I mean, I'm a minimalist, man. I can live in a cardboard box. It doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I'm trying to do the right thing. Well, in that, I picked up some gear. And this is part I don't know if I put this down on the format, but I was actually DJing for Mardi Gras on the Mardi Gras floats for my father-in-law because he was complaining about in which they were charging what they charge, and he's like, man, I said, well, dude, we'll get some equipment and I'll just DJ for you for Mardi Gras because I didn't want to DJ anymore. Like, I mean, I was out of that. I didn't want to do it, and so I got some equipment. So fast forward while I'm going through the divorce, I'm sitting there in the shop in this little, basically it's some offices that I've made in a livable space. You know, I had an air mattress that I lived on, a chair, and a TV, and I had all this sound equipment just sitting there. So I said, man, I'm gonna make me a little rig and just start singing. So, and I wasn't real social at this point, you know, because, you know, you're going through that change and you're trying to navigate you know, getting divorced and all the stuff that entails. And it's like, okay, well, let me find something to kind of anchor on. You know, let me find something that I love to do. You know, I don't necessarily have to do it in front of people. At this point, I'm just doing it to have fun. You know, and I like, you know, going sing karaoke and all that stuff. So it's like, you know, just kind of get that little, what's nice about doing that, you can jump in, singing with a band. Your buddy's got a band. You come in and do a few songs. You don't have to set up. You don't have to tear down. You just go in there and have some fun and get out of there. So I take my DJ rig and I kind of make it into a singing rig, right? So I start singing. I get some tracks from some friends of mine, just some old country songs, and just start singing, start playing a little bit, and just start doing it for myself. Well, fast forward, I'm in Lake Charles, and I'm actually a friend of mine. I was sitting there, okay, and this girl says, and I'll never forget this. She goes, "Man, why don't you do this? Like, why don't you? I would go see that, right?" So I get this idea. I'm like, I said, if I got enough tracks together, which at this point, I'm probably singing 80 to 100 songs. One of the things that I do, I know a lot of music. I just know a lot of music, and I've got an affinity for lyrics, right? So I take the idea and I say, okay, well, how can I do it? Will they do it? So, one-man band, acoustic sets, yeah. So there's a couple of places around here, which I started off unknowingly at these corporate gigs. Like I did Twin Peaks and Walk-Ons is a big sports bar down here that's a corporate deal. And a couple of little places I started playing out. Well, it went over pretty well. Started improving, got some new equipment, started getting some sound equipment based on doing singing versus DJing, right? Because it is different. There's different equipment that you have to get, improve my stuff. Well, at this point, it's probably about a year and a half after I get divorced, I start dating this girl, and it's it's pretty serious, and she's a good gal, and I everything like that. Well, we break up for Mardi Gras like that year. Like I get off the Mardi Gras float, and we like break up, right? And about 2 weeks later, I get in a bad motorcycle accident, right? Nothing to do with what happened there. It's just part of what's happening with the transition, right? So I get in a bad motorcycle wreck, and I almost die. Well, yeah, so had to have a couple of surgeries, ended up with a blood clot in my leg, and just a lot of health problems at that particular point in time. So I've got to quit doing my gigs, right? Because I can't physically bring my equipment to do the gigs, and I'm not scheduling anything. And it was bad because I was just kind of trying to starting to get some momentum, right? And then get past that about a year and a half. Of course, I'm still at UPS. I'm still full-time sales at UPS. Well, I thought, okay, I'm feeling better. Started singing again at home. Okay, well, maybe I can start, I got some different equipment. It was a lot lighter, so I could handle it. And so, okay, well, let me start putting my name back out there. Put my name back out there again. Started getting gigs, probably at that time, 4 to 5 a month. My mom found out she's got cancer, right? At this point, so I'm probably about 6 months in and starting to book gigs. Well, I just so happened that I didn't have anything booked like for that 2 months when I found out. Like I was just about to start to get more gigs, get back going, to start scheduling, and then I find out about my mom. Well, let me tell you about this. So backing up a little bit, so I'm living in my ex-father-in-law's shop, while also branch out and I buy me a new house. So at this point, I've left the trailer. I've left the shop. I've moved into my house. Well, a month later, then I find out about my mom having cancer. So I just make this big move, of which, and I'm thinking in hindsight, if I got to go take care of her, if I was living in the shop, I could have just bailed out of the shop and went home, right? Which, I could still sell the place and go home, but it's more complicated because I can't just pick up and go take care of her if she needs it. But at this point, we don't know, right, what's happening. So cancer is called multiple myeloma. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's like it's a blood cancer. It's similar to leukemia. It affects your internal organs. So anyway, so I shut it down, my singing, and then start taking care of her and taking her through treatment over there in Houston. Oh, by the way, just to let you know, as far as right now, she's doing fantastic. She's on some maintenance, but she's doing great. Like she's awesome. So, but we get her back going. Probably takes about a year and a half. I know that's kind of a reoccurring theme, right? It's like a year and a half, right? So, literally get her back over into Louisiana. 3 days later, that's when COVID shutdown happens. I got her out of Texas 3 days before they shut the border down.
Wow.
Right? Get her back home. So thankful for that and everything. So COVID, at the first, of course, I done been out of it, singing at this point for almost a year and a half. So I really didn't expect to, pick back up, although I wanted to, but I didn't know. My mom's doing well, so I'm thinking, okay, well, I can start gigging again. COVID hits. Well, you'd think that'd be the end to everything. But what it did was it moved people outside and these businesses outside, and they were having venues and stuff, acoustics and one-man bands and everything outside, and especially like these bands and these restaurants, because they couldn't have people inside. They were doing outside stuff. So that really was a catalyst to a lot of gigs, right? A lot of businesses, opening this up. And at this point, you can't have full bands because there's people restrictions and things like that. So I got in with this guy who owned a big restaurant, who owned one of the major bars over here, and I start doing one-man shows. Well, from there, I kind of went to this next place. So I built about probably 5 or 6 places that I'm playing real regular, along with work, and doing UPS, but really helped to get my name out there and to be able to put me in front of people in places that I would have never been without COVID, right? So at that point, we transitioned through this whole about year and a half of COVID and everything, kind of getting back to its quote unquote normal situations. Well, I was able to take that time and what I did with the outside gigs to, fast forward to now, was able to make my LLC, was able to, put production in as a business. I'm starting my own studio. So transitioning into, okay, let me back up. So at this point, I'm still at UPS, but then UPS comes at me with, hey man, we got this retirement package. You just made 20 years. What do you want to do? You can stay or you can go. This is what you do if you stay. This is what you do if you go. So I checked the numbers, looked at it, and man, it was like, you know what? I'm going to try to make this happen. Again, getting back to the whole theme of the situation, I'm going to bet on myself again, right? UPS is taking good care of me, man. Retirement's great. My bills are at a minimum, which I try to live within my means so I can go ahead and pull away and see what we can get done. Well, like I say, at this point, it's like, okay, well, my singing is going well. So I'd say probably about 6 months into my first year of retirement, the singing's going really well. So I decided to make an LLC and do it the right way and all that stuff. So become, go into business for myself. And now I got studio production that I'm adding to it, sound equipment. Cause I've run sound equipment my whole life. So, doing some, consulting work, especially on the Mardi Gras floats, man, because believe it or not, man, I get a lot of calls. Hey man, how can we rig up a Mardi Gras float? Right. So it's like, it's just a whole different animal. Inside sound, outside sound, of course, and then just, doing gigs and gigging. And so that's all part of my transition into my own business from a corporate, situation. So between the military, corporate UPS, and now my own business. And that's the 10-year cycle, right? So this starts my next 10 years. So,
well, we'll see what 10 years from now looks like. Maybe we'll have to come back to this and revisit it. I love the fact, and here's where we're kind of picking up now and bring everybody up to speed. So first of all, I love the fact that a big theme of your story is that you go 150% at everything you do. You throw your entire self into everything. It's really hard to not be successful when you do that. And along the way, you've had some serious highs and some serious lows. You've always had a great attitude. And I think that's also maybe a secret to your success as well, is continuing to find the good in every situation that you're in, learning from it, navigating quickly, and continuing to bet on yourself. And I think even as we're talking about it now, betting on yourself is who you are. And when I started seeing, so one of the great things about what you're doing at this point, traveling around, doing these gigs, I've never seen anybody do self-marketing as good as I do it. And I'm going to say that because when I was a pro wrestler, I was getting booked at a lot of places I shouldn't have got booked just because of the marketing that I was doing, and nobody was doing it for me. And that's because nobody knew the product like I did. I was marketing in a way that made everybody want to be a part of it. And that's what you're doing. I'm seeing all of the advertising images that you're putting up. And one of my favorite things that you're doing right now, and we're going to give the fans here an opportunity to follow you as well at the close of the show, but you are live streaming your shows.
Yes, sir.
So I love getting the alerts on my phone saying that you've gone live, and I'll just pop in and watch you sing some of the songs. I wish sometimes that I could be a camera in the back of the room, because I really want to see how you set that up. And you're working the camera, by the way, which is keep in mind, folks, if you haven't seen this yet, and I really hope you do, he's not only on stage working with the fans that are in his attendance, right? He's interacting with them as he's singing. He's also interacting with the camera. And so being able to do both, that's, trust me, my friend, that is a learned skill. So nice job there.
Yeah. So how the lives came about was COVID as well. So, and then also part of my mom's chemo treatment when she was in Houston at MD Anderson. Of course, I couldn't be there during the week. So I would go on the weekends and stay with her, and then I'd come back to work during the week. Well, on Wednesday, to break up her week, I would go live and I would sing, and then I did some live shows, and I also did some what you call? I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Anyway.
So you're doing live shows in addition to?
Yeah, so I'm doing live shows only at this point. God, what am I looking for? When you when somebody needs help and you got to get them money, you're golly.
So you're trying to raise. You're doing.
Hit your head a lot.
Hey, trust me, I understand that. You're trying to help raise money for other people. You're doing benefits and things like that.
Benefits. Yeah. That's what I'm looking for. So I'm doing some benefits. I'm doing some live stuff. Plus, it's helping get my name out there. Plus, I'm building a live following along with the in-person following. So it's part of the aspect of what happened. But I really did it ultimately to break up my mom's week, because then she had something to look forward to on Wednesday, and she looked forward to seeing my shows while she's an inpatient, by herself in Houston. Because she's a small town lady. She's not, she got a small circle of friends, a lot of family. That's it, So she was over there by herself with nobody there. But at least with me going live on Wednesday, she could see me, and then that would break up her week till I could get there on Fridays, and stay the weekend with her. So that's how the lives came about. A lot of COVID, and then of course with my mom, and then just carried it on. And what I found in difficulty and transition is that I used to interact with the Facebook a lot more, but now fortunately, like my live shows are not my live Facebook shows, but my in-person shows, I got a lot more people, and they kind of don't understand Facebook. So talk about navigating change. I've got to be able to interact with the crowd that's there, but I got to be able to interact with the crowd that's on my Facebook, on my live feed, right?
Which, well, what I've seen at some of your recent streams, I think you've struck a good balance, because of the people that are watching the stream know that you're having to interact with the live crowd, and then just giving a very small percent of the attention back over to the Facebook crowd. That's working for you. So in my opinion, I don't know that I would change anything about that. I think there's some charm to it.
Oh, thank you, man. Yeah. I mean, and I appreciate it. Look, it floors me that one person wants to sit there and listen to me sing. It just does. I mean, I'm not that guy, right? I mean, do I think I can sing? Yeah. I always tell people, hey, you tell me your opinion. I'm out here doing it. You might think I can, you might think I can't. But there's people that do like it. So I mean, why not continue? You know what I'm saying? So, but no, I love interacting with the whole thing. I love interacting with Facebook. I love interacting with the people. Although I will say this, and one thing with a good friend of mine that's doing the same thing, and he's really good at it, is, man, I'm so militant and so corporate, right? So when I get done with a gig, it's like I want to break my stuff down and load it up because I got to imaginarily be somewhere that I don't really have to be anywhere, right? It's just in my mind. I got to break this stuff down and get it into the truck. Is taking that time to be able to, just go out and hang out with the people for a little while, and say, hey, and I got some promotion stuff there too, t-shirts, koozies, all kind of, promotional items that I sell. And then, of course, I got a new song, and that's a new thing, man, writing songs and doing the songs with a friend of mine who has a studio in Kentucky. So that's kind of the newest phase of this deal. Just put out my 5th original song, but really the first one I think that's a decent song. And it's on my page, but they all been, they've been okay, but I'm getting better at doing that too. So just trying to write when I can or get ideas when I can, and that's kind of refreshing. The best to do my own stuff, rather than the cover stuff.
Yeah, right. As of right now, on average, how many bookings per week are you taking?
I try to get no more than 3. 3 is pretty much where I'm at my max because I'm trying to balance what I'm doing. I got my place. I got about 5 acres that I take care of. So between trying to take care of that, and then I don't want to get burnt out and be in front of people either.
Sure.
I want to be able to give them what they're coming to see, and have a good time with them and enjoy it. And right now, I'd say 3 a week. So about 12 a month on the average. But I also learn, and that's something in transition and learning your craft is like, okay, man, like I just opened up my books for 23. I schedule my off time first. So now when I schedule in, I'm not trying to unschedule or reschedule because I didn't build time off in, right?
That's a great tip. Like as I'm booking stuff for myself now, I have not done that. I absolutely need to do that. So that's a great point.
Well, I had to learn the hard way. Probably the second 2 things I learned about scheduling with this deal. Number one, you got to be 6 months ahead. With UPS, everything was a quarterly schedule. With the military, everything's a quarterly schedule, right? So with this gig or doing this thing, you got to be 6 months ahead. So I'm going to need to start scheduling January now, right? These people are looking for that. Now, some places open up and you might get some opportunities, but for the most part, your solid monthly gigs are going to be 6 months ahead trying to get in there, right? So what I didn't do first couple years that I did this is do exactly what I just said, is built in that off time and then schedule around in there. That way there's no scheduling conflict. And man, if I want to put a gig in, well, I call it a red mark day. So I got a red mark that I put across the day. If I want to schedule in a red mark day, then I can, but it's my option. It's already scheduled off. But if I want to go on, like let's just say, for example, I got a new place that I would try to get in and I want to do it, and that's the only day they got available, and I got to, sometimes you got to bite the bullet. Yeah. I know I probably got 2 days off after that anyway. So, I mean, as long as I got a couple of days in between, and then, of course, major holidays, Memorial Day, 4th of July, try to do once a quarter, give myself a nice break,
That's good. We mentioned a little bit about booking into the future and things like that. So what does the future look like for you at this point? What's on the horizon for you?
Well, like I just mentioned, man, I opened up the books for 23 2 days ago because I've been getting some demand, and improving my equipment. I sent you pictures of my new equipment. I think I got my old equipment sold already, which is not old. It's only 2 years old, but also improving my sound, trying to sing at least 2 hours a day, trying to be at least an hour in the studio a day, and not getting burnt out, pacing myself through my day, taking care of my physical health, going more cardio, doing some breathing exercises. I haven't found a in-person voice coach yet, but I got a lady that's on YouTube I think she's really good. I've learned a lot about it. There's a lot to singing than just getting up and singing, and a lot more than I know for sure. I'm just, like I say, old rodeo hand that's can carry a few tunes every now and again, you know. But yeah, trying to get better at that and improve it. As all of that's improved, it's also improved my marketability because more people are wanting to go see. Like, you know, I would average probably when I was starting, let's say 5 to 10 people showing. Look, I've sang for 2 people before. I mean, that's not, you know, but I will say this. You get the same show with me. If there's 2 or 200 or 2,000, I'm doing it. I'm doing the same show. I'm doing the same show. I'm going to feed off of what is there, but I also can draw back to those days in the shop where I was singing to 4 walls, man. I had my little imaginary audience, man, and we were having a good time, right? So we're going to have a good time. Hopefully that comes across. And like I say, I've probably had upwards of, I'd probably say about 150 people is about the biggest crowd I've had so far, you know. And, thought about getting into a band, but I talked to a buddy of mine who's doing the same thing that was in bands for 40 years. And he says, man, he said, if you're making it by yourself and you're getting bookings, man, and you continue to improve like you're doing, which, you know, I take some sage advice from a dude that's doing something for 40 years. He said, man, just keep doing what you're doing. You know, an opportunity presents itself for something else. Obviously, you know, take that into consideration. But, man, he says, I think you're doing what you need to do and doing it the right way, which I appreciated a lot because, you know, like I said, dude, if you want to come talk about riding bulls, I could tell him this is how to do it. But when that dude tells me about how to sing or how to, you know, how to work in the music, this little music part of music industry, I'm going to listen, you know?
Yeah. Listen to the masters. That's a great point. So those who are listening now or watching this video on YouTube, where can they find you? Where can they get the whole experience that you provide?
Well, I'm on Facebook right now, looking at getting a YouTube channel. That's my next, I guess, social media that I'm going to delve into because I got more original stuff now. So I'm going to try to put that original stuff together and get it out there. But Kenny Wade Live on Facebook Live, or follow me, Kenny Wade. Send me a message and I'll friend you. You can set up yourself for alerts for my live. I'd say I go live at 90% of my shows. The only time I ever don't go live with my in-person shows, if I got internet issues, which around here sometimes you got metal buildings or no Wi-Fi or whatever, you'll have issues. But Kenny Wade Live on Facebook, Kenny Wade on Facebook. For right now, that's all I'm doing is Facebook. That's all I have. So
okay,
yeah. Or live in the Lafayette area, South Louisiana area, man. I'm booking all over the place. So yeah, just look for Kenny Wade.
Okay. Hey, buddy, it's been an incredible pleasure to talk to you again and hear your full story and be able to learn some things from you along the way. You have a very inspirational story, and I think that a lot of people who are listening right now can take a lot away from it. Even if you're not a singer, a rodeo person, a pro wrestler, the idea here is to be able to learn how to navigate through change. And some people do it differently. And if learning from some of the masters, so to speak, on how to do it is the only way to learn out in the world, then hopefully I've helped provide some great guests on the show, including yourself, that can do that for some people out there. So I appreciate you taking the time to do this for me today.
Oh, absolutely, man. I appreciate you, getting a hold of me and having to do this, man. It's always great to see you. Hopefully we'll be in more contact now that, we've made contact again and then have some conversations, man. But I appreciate you letting me be here and put myself in this format, man. It's been a pleasure.
And there you have it. That was my interview with Kenny Wade, ladies and gentlemen, a personality like no other. Again, I would highly encourage you to go over to his Facebook page and give him a follow. He is streaming his shows live. I've never seen anybody do it quite like him. He almost brings you right on stage with him and interacts with the Facebook crowd along with his live crowd. It's a lot of fun. So if you get a chance, go and give him a follow. But if you're listening, Kenny boy, thank you very much for being a guest on my show. I really appreciate it. Now, as we're winding down here, I'm just going to plug a couple of things. Number one, I don't know if you can see it, and I know the audio folks certainly can't, but I'm wearing my new t-shirt. There it is, available on prowrestlingtees.com/Gator McGraw. All of those links can be found on all my social media, but the new t-shirt just came out, designed by a really talented artist on Instagram. And it's a nod to a Rob Zombie live poster that I loved, and I'm a big Rob Zombie fan. So we did a Gator McGraw Rob Zombie mashup, and it turned out really, really good. And I'm just thrilled to have it as part of my merch finally. And speaking of social media, go give me a follow on all the social medias. I'm on the Twitters, I'm on the Instagrams, I'm on the Facebooks. Go out there and follow along with me. And I try to spread out my posts the best I can and put some diversity in them. So if you're generally speaking, if you're seeing something on Twitter, it probably isn't on one of my other platforms, and vice versa. I try to just make some of the content exclusive to certain platforms. But yeah, they're all out there. Go give them a follow. I promise you won't be disappointed. And if you are, I'm still taking speaking engagements, ladies and gentlemen. So if you are working for an organization or you work for a school or something like that, that is looking for a speaker that can come in and really make an impact, look no further than yours truly. Reach out to me. It's support. My email is support@aprowrestlersguide.com, or hit me up on any of the social medias. And I can work within any budget. Really, I can. So it's working with any budget. I can present to any size audience that you want. It's just a matter of us customizing something for you that would be the experience that you're looking for. But just let me know. I'm happy to come in and do that for you and continue on the process of spreading the word about self-confidence. That's all I have today. I appreciate all of you following along, listening along, watching along, however you're doing it. As long as you're with me on this journey, thank you so much. And I will see you all next time on Wrestling with Tomorrow, the podcast. Bye-bye.